I would love it if they ever added combi weapons to Space Marine 2. All right, we have a photo here from the mobile game Tacticus, which is pretty good. But yeah, I admit this does look very cool. I do like the way this weapon looks. And overall, combi weapons would definitely be similar to like the bolt rifle grenade launcher situation. And I do think combi weapons would be a great addition into the game. Now, I'm not 100% sure if the devs really thought about this, so I thought it was appropriate to highlight the combi weapons since we were talking about the bolt rifle recently. A commenter mentioned that the bolt rifle with like a plasma variant and like a melta variant, in addition to the grenade launcher, could be a very spicy way to mix it up with that weapon. It could make the bolt rifle rather appealing, to be honest, and I agree. But the one thing I wanted to point out was I'm not too sure if the devs are going to be able to completely revert that weapon into a combi weapon. So I kind of wanted to revisit this conversation to think of a way the combi weapon could exist outside of the bolt rifle. And I think this weapon's kind of interesting. This weapon does kind of look like a bolt rifle. I understand that, but ultimately, couldn't you attach like a plasma weapon into like a shotgun? Maybe that could be cool. But yeah, I mean, plasma's kind of an interesting combination with any weapon because I feel like it would be kind of rough for the plasma part to just overtake the other part of the weapon. So you do need to think of something that is going to be a different enough to, justify the switching of the fire types. And I do think, this would be a great opportunity to add in a primary. And honestly, we haven't heard much about a new primary weapon. And I think this would be a cool one to add for sure. I know the next weapons that we have been talking about is, like there's a melee weapon, maybe grav pistol. I'm not 100% sure actually what the devs are cooking with as far as what the next weapons could be. I know, obviously, we all know that there could be a tech marine, and the devs have confirmed they are working on a new class. So practically whatever weapons that class comes with could be new weapons as well. So I'm not 100% sure if the devs are actually focusing in on adding a new primary, but dude, honestly, this would be a great addition to the game. Does the game need combi weapons? Maybe not, but there's already a system built in the game that can kind of support a combination weapon in the sense that you can, aim down the barrel and just switch the fire type, similar to the grenade launcher, and it would work out great. The only reason a plasma shotgun kind of popped in my head, this kind of looks like a shotgun, but I don't think it is. I do think this is a bolt rifle. And I do think, obviously, plasmas would be the easiest one to combine with any other weapon. But ultimately, I think a shotgun would be different enough. However, I am pretty sure, now you guys might need to correct me on this, but I'm pretty sure that there are no, like, Astartes shotguns or something like that. I remember, like, vaguely bringing up shotguns like months ago, and I think somebody mentioned that before, so I'm not 100% sure if a shotgun is even possible, but ultimately a combi weapon would be really cool. And I gotta admit, the mobile game here, Tacticus, definitely makes this look really cool. I do like the skin regardless. Considering the bolt rifle with grenade launcher, plasma weapons, and melta weapons are all in the game already, it definitely seems like it wouldn't be too much of a stretch on the devs being able to implement them, but I doubt we will see them for a long while. Yeah, I mean, I agree as far as the time frame for that. I feel like if combination weapons were added to the game, it's definitely more of like a year 2 thing. It would be cool. And ultimately, I do want to see a new primary in the game. But yeah, obviously, bolt rifle, grenade launcher. The plasma weapons is pretty interesting. To be honest with the plasma weapons, just to reiterate how I feel about the plasma weapons, because I recently tried out the common shots on plasmas, they definitely feel like they're not great. So the plasma weapons themselves should have like charge attacks and common shots, but plasma right now, as far as absolute and lethal, really only operates with one fire setting, and that's charged attacks. However, I do admit a plasma weapon, like a charged plasma shot on like any weapon, just would make it feel a lot more impactful. See, that's the thing though. Would it be bad if it's just like a flat out buff to a weapon? That's why I feel like adding a combination weapon to a weapon we already have in the game would be kind of rough to do. Because if you just add a plasma to the bolt rifle, would you even use the bolt rifle? You know what I mean? But yeah, ultimately, I think that's definitely something they would have to navigate. And yeah, I agree. It would definitely take a long time for that. Melta would be interesting. I think a Melta would be. I think Melta would be easy enough, or even just like a Inferno pistol attachment to the bolt rifle. I think that would be easy enough to do. But it's just like I don't want them to combine anything with the bolt rifle until they buff it. You know what I mean? I know a Melta would be a buff, but I kind of want to use the grenade launcher version of the bolt rifle as well. So, I mean, I wouldn't say it's too much of a stretch for the devs to be able to pull this off. But yeah, it's definitely not something I would expect them to do. Now, that said, if the devs do mention a combi weapon system in year 2, I'd be very impressed. Combi weapons kind of feel like a Space Marine 3 thing, but ultimately, it is definitely something that the game kind of supports already. Until you realize that the combi part is a one-time deal, at least that's what it is on Tabletop. A combi flamer, for example, only has one blast in it, and then it's just a bolter. Basically, imagine using the one with grenade launcher, but only being able to shoot one grenade throughout the entire thing. All right, that's kind of a bad way to put that. Is this fair? Is this like true? Because if that's the case, that's kind of awkward. And I understand now why combi weapons would work that way on Tacticus as well, because Tacticus essentially is a smaller version of the Tabletop. And yeah, there are definitely some moves in Tacticus that I believe you can only use at like for one time, I believe. So ultimately it does feel like the combi weapons are better placed within the Tabletop situation. But yeah, that's unfortunate. A combi weapon flamer, for example, only has one blast. Oh, are they talking about Meltas? I think that would make sense. But then it's just a bolter. Yeah, that would be unfortunate. That would definitely be unfortunate. I wouldn't want to see combi weapons operate that way. I feel like that would be a lot of effort to put something in the game that functionally wouldn't really complement the game too well. Yeah, that's kind of a disappointing revelation here. Now, yeah, let me know in the comments if you guys seen anything like this, or if you know, like, on Tabletop, combi weapons operate within a one-time use ruling. If that's the case, that would be unfortunate. It would have to be a really, really strong blast to to justify that, to be completely honest, especially on the bolter, you know what I mean? Easy addition as the bolter with grenade launcher is a good example of how they could work. Examples: bolter with Melta, maybe 10 to 15 shots available. Plasma, 50 to 80 ammo in reserve. Works like a plasma pistol. Yeah, that makes sense. Honestly, if they had less ammo than the real versions of like the plasma incinerator, that would make sense. Volkite, 200 ammo in reserve, no need to reload. Okay, now a Volkite on any sort of weapon, that sounds really cool. That actually sounds really cool. Flamer, Pyre, like Volkite, when they introduce flame weapons. When they introduce flame weapons. Interesting. Yeah, we talked about flame weapons recently. That would be sick. Honestly, yeah, they couldn't. That's true. They couldn't add flamer combination weapons before they add the actual flamer. That does make sense. A lot of people suggested DPS dots. Basically flame dots. Basically, you flame the target, it actually catches fire, and then it's damage over time. Yeah, that totally makes sense. I think that would be a great addition to like any weapon to just put on some damage over time. I like the idea of that. Downsides: no zoom in option for the bolter, like the grenade launcher variant. Only available to tactical. This makes sense. This does make sense. Unfortunately though, like that just isn't as fun as I'd like to imagine. I would also give it to Vanguard, why not? And then ultimately Vanguard and Tactical. I think that should be fine. But yeah, I guess it depends on the combination, right? Though could definitely be a positive gun to give the Tactical more identity as a jack of all trades. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I like the idea of it, for sure. Weapon perks only function for the bolter itself. Would need a revamp to include perks for the combi weapon and or make the combi bolter a separate weapon to the current bolter. Probably just make every bolter variant have a different combi weapon attached. The current bolter as a standalone weapon is superseded by the other bolter types, like HBR. Okay. So, the more I'm starting to read about this, the more I'm getting the vibe that this is going to be a pain to balance. Like, 100%. If they added combination weapons into the game, I wouldn't want them to be underpowered. And it does sound like no matter what, it's just it's just going to be a powerful thing. I do understand that, like, if you add a plasma onto a bolter, I'm just using the bolt rifle as an example, but if you just add the plasma onto it, it would be kind of disappointing to, you know, every time you're out of plasma ammo to just feel like you're just using a weapon you don't want to use, you know, like that sort of thing. Ultimately, I think if they would add in a combination weapon to the game, I feel like it would definitely suit the weapon if they kind of focused on the weapon itself being a combination weapon and then have the perks centered around like switching the fire types. That would be kind of cool. I understand why the bolt rifle should have a combination variant. I understand the bolt rifle isn't good, and I do think, yes, the bolt rifle does need some sort of buff, and just adding a plasma to it would essentially do that. I get that. But still, I would like to see some build variations with the combination weapon, because I just think it would be perfect for more builds, obviously, because that is kind of how it works, in a sense, that it's like you have a combination weapon. It would be disappointing if you can only build around it one way. You know what I mean? Like right now, I do think the plasma in itself already can be a little bit you just don't have that many builds with the plasma right now because of the common shots feeling kind of underwhelming. So if you're only using the plasma in like a charge shot way, you know, it can eventually, you're going to want some options. You're going to want to try something new. And I think a combi weapon would definitely be a great switch up. I just feel like it would be a great approach to combat. If you could just switch your weapon type whenever you wanted, you could just get your variety within the operation, essentially, which would be kind of cool. But yeah, that's ultimately does sound like a pain to balance. So I definitely don't. I think the devs are capable of it, but I wouldn't mind. Well, I wouldn't judge them if they decide not to go and do anything with combination weapons, because it sounds like a lot. It does sound like a lot. Even just thinking about it, it's like, okay, so would anybody even want to use the bolt rifle if it had like a plasma attached to it, but it just had less ammo than the other plasma? But then it's like, well, it would be a switch up. I do agree. But like, I don't know. The charged plasma is just so good right now. I couldn't imagine, running a bolt rifle plasma over just the plasma with more ammo. You know what I mean? But yeah, ultimately, I do think the flamer idea, Volkite, I mean, these are great ideas. It's just kind of what the devs are capable of doing. That's kind of the factor, you know? And also the weapon balance we have right now and the weapon economy. Tactical does have a fair amount of weapons right now. So I'm not too sure a combi weapon would be something they could just add in. And I guess at the very least, they could just add variants within other weapons. That would be fine. Ooh, I guess that's fair. They could add combi variants to multiple weapons and just not, like the bolt rifle, auto bolt rifle, maybe the instigator, something like that. You know what I mean? They don't have to add the combination variant to just one weapon. They could do multiple weapons. Oh, yeah, that's pretty much how I guess you would do that. You know how many builds we would have if multiple weapons had combination variants? That would be insane. I would love to definitely playtest that and, theory craft some builds around that. That would be cool. But yeah, regardless, let me know in the comments how you guys feel about this. Would combi weapons be a little bit overpowered if they were only one-time use? Would they be underpowered? I mean, honestly, a one-time use combination weapon doesn't sound very good. So I'm not 100% sure if the tabletop even does that anymore. But regardless, let me know in the comments how you guys feel about that. And thanks for watching.